Hi everyone, I'm April, and you're watching The Tangled Cat Speaks, and this is a book edition. So I actually went through quite a few books this time. I think I got 10 done. A lot. I did a lot, and there was a few that I was kind of on. But there was a couple that I was really pleasantly surprised. So let's get into it. Um, yes, I was thinking. I kept meaning in the past several episodes to let you know how I've been going on the 100 book challenge that I've been doing since the beginning of the year. The 100 book challenge is a challenge that I heard from Michael Cavon on his channel, and I know that several other big YouTubers participate in this every year. And what it is you read 100 books that you already own before you're allowed to buy any new books. I am up to 95. As of today, I'm up to 95, so I only need 5 more books before I can go out and buy something brand new and shiny and crisp and solid. But until then, let's talk about what I read to this past couple of weeks to get me to that 95. Where do I start? Let's start with a couple of ebooks. Let's see, I got my notes here. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is The Couple Across the Street. This is a book by Anita Waller. It's a thriller mystery type thing, and what it's about is there's 2 women. They live across the street from each other, and they're very close friends. One is married, and it's kind of believed that her husband is not very nice to her. And when he turns up dead, there's a lot of people under suspicion. It's a really good story, and I had never read anything by Anita Waller before. And I got that one off of the Prime reading, so it was kind of like a borrowed thing. And I found a couple more by her under the Prime reading that I would like to read because I really enjoyed her style of writing. So that one was that. Then I read a really short one, another one of the short sci-fi short stories, also on Prime reading. This one was by Paul Tremblay, and it's called The Last Conversation. So this one is only like 56 pages long. Sci-fi, and it's about a person who wakes up. They're in total darkness. They don't know where they are. They don't know why they're there. They don't know what's going on. And they're talking through sort of an intercom type thing to someone else who is asking them questions, and the questions are about themselves, but they don't seem to know the answers. And some of them that they do, they're not sure if they're their own answers or if they kind of get the feeling that they're maybe not coming from them. Like maybe they've been told this, and is it really their own memory, or is it just a memory of them being told that, if that makes sense. So the story is super short, like I said, and so I don't want to give a lot away, but it's basically this person trying to figure out what happened to them, where they are, who is this person talking to them, and what is their history? Like, who are they? They literally need to find out who they are, who they themselves are. Very interesting story, and the twist at the end was pretty cool. I mean, 56-page book, and it's got a good twist. That's pretty good writing. Let's see. Then there was another ebook. Now, this is one that I had purchased by Ramona Emerson. It's called Shutter. And I was interested in this one because Ramona Emerson is from New Mexico. I can't remember if she actually lives in Albuquerque, but she's a Native American author. Dine, I believe it's pronounced. Sorry, I lost my train of thought again. There is a bird right outside my window, and I just got distracted. Anyway, it's called Shutter because the main character is a photographer. She works with the forensics department for the police. She's not part of law enforcement. She's kind of a contract. She's kind of contracted out to take these photographs. Now the twist is she also sees ghosts, which is why I picked it up for spooky season. It's a really good story, really very interesting, kind of fast paced. It wasn't scary like I thought, but it was definitely a good ghost story. Had a really good time with that, and I am keeping my eye out for any other titles by this author. I think this so far is her first one, but I really would like to read something else by her because I really enjoyed that. And then the other ebook that I read was the longest one, and this is book 8 in the Shadows of the Apt series that I've been reading all year long. Book 8, and it's by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This one was called The Air War. And like I say every month, the Shadows of the Apt series is the one where there are a whole bunch of different types of races, but they're basically like humans that have insect characteristics. So there's ant people and moth people and wasp people. And this particular one, there's just been this ongoing clash between the wasps and everyone else. And in this particular one, there's a pretty good air battle that goes on, and it's very exciting. The whole thing is kind of set in an era where people are, it's kind of like I guess steampunk. Everything is kind of clockwork type of technology, but they're slowly coming into like an industrial revolution type of thing. So there's just a lot of things going on. There was a lot of big moments in this story, and I am super, super excited to get to book number 9. There's only 10, so I've got 2 more books, and like I want to know the ending. I must know the ending. But I don't want this story to end because it's just so good. I'm really, really enjoying it. So the next book that I'll be starting tomorrow will be War Master's Gate. Sounds exciting. So let's talk about audiobooks. One that I did was a spooky season one. I had talked last time about M.R. James. He's a classic horror author, and he does mostly very short stories. So I found one on Audible, I believe, and it was Ghost Stories Volume 2. This was one that comes with the membership, so I didn't have to pay for it. It had 5 or 6 short stories, and they were all really good. And one of the stories was already in another collection that I read last couple of weeks ago, and that was Mezzotint, which was fine because I really enjoyed Mezzotint. That was my favorite one of that previous collection. So I read it again in this one, and I listened to it. And it's very different listening to it than it is reading it. And it was very good. I really enjoyed that. So I got that audiobook done. And then the other audiobook I just recently finished. And this was kind of like an impromptu decision to read the Kingsbridge series by Ken Follett. Now, I read the original story, Pillars of the Earth, 20-ish years ago. And I forgot what the name of that title was. I forgot what the author was. But every now and then, the whole idea of a story set hundreds of years ago where somebody's trying to build a cathedral would keep coming to my mind, and I would try to think, what is that? And then I would forget about it and then not think about it for a while. But every now and then it would just keep popping up. And then Mike on Mike's book reviews here on YouTube mentioned that he wanted to start reading that series. And I'm like, that's the one. That's it. So I decided I'm going to read those too. Now there are 4 books, I believe. There was the original Pillars of the Earth. Then I think there's several other books that come both after and before. And most people that have jumped on the bandwagon with Mike from Mike's book reviews are going to be doing it in publication order. But me, being the rebel that I am, I'm doing it in chronological order. Now, from what I understand, these all have very huge time jumps in between books, so it doesn't matter. They're basically standalones within the same era. So it doesn't really matter what order, from what I'm understanding, um, which is fine by me. But I just thought I wanted to go through chronologically. So I started with the evening and the morning. And again, this is an audio version that I borrowed from my library. Um, and this one is basically about a young woman who is set to marry. He's not a king. He's like a lord, I guess he would be considered. I can't remember what his actual title is. Um, and she's this. He's English. She's from Normandy, and all of her kind of goings on and adjusting to that life. And then there's kind of two plots going on, and the other one is about a young man who is interested in boat building, and he's got a whole lot of ideas that make his boats different than everybody else's. And of course, people don't like anybody who is smarter than they are. So he's got a lot of issues that he needs to overcome as well. And it's a really big book. It's a 24-hour audiobook. But I ate it up. I enjoyed that very, very much. It is really brutal as far as the treatment of women, but I mean, this is set in the late 10th century. So, yeah, I mean, it happened. And it doesn't sugarcoat any of that. It doesn't gloss over any of it. So it's a little bit difficult in that respect, but it's a really good story. So now in November, at some point, amongst all the other things that I had planned already, I'll be getting to, I think it's called The Armor of Light. I think that's the newest one that's been released in this series, the most recent one. But as far as I understand chronologically, it's the second one. But again, there's time jumps. They're not really related. None of the characters are going to cross over, from what I understand. And that's also one that I'm borrowing from the library. But strangely enough, my library doesn't have this one on Libby or Hoopla. It's actually on CDs. I don't have a CD player. So I guess I'm going to be sitting in my car a lot listening to that. But hey, I can knit in my car. And then that brings me to the physical books that I read. One of them I do not have anymore because I immediately donated it. I happened to be at my job, and my job it's a community center, and they have a lending library there. And as soon as I was done with it, I just stuck it on the shelf, and that was the end of that. So it didn't even occur to me, take it home because you still have a video to record. And then by the time I went back, it was gone. Somebody had already borrowed it. But that book was called Roanoke, by Lee Miller. And it's a nonfiction historical about the missing colony of Roanoke and where they might have gone. I thought, this would be a good story to read, a good nonfiction to read for spooky season, because I mean, what could be creepier than an entire colony gone missing in the wilderness? It was good. It wasn't my favorite. There was a lot of I don't know. I think it was just the way that the author wrote, and it just was dry. I think it could have been presented in a more appealing way. It just was written kind of dry, and I kind of trudged through it. But overall, that whole story is just very intriguing to me. So, it was kind of middle of the road on that one. Another one that I was kind of middle of the road, and maybe this is just it wasn't yeah it wasn't time for me to read it. This was Streets of Laredo by Larry McMurtry. And I say that maybe it wasn't yet time for me to read it because I read, again, I did this series in chronological order as opposed to publication order, because the original book was Lonesome Dove. Then he did Streets of Laredo. Then he went back and did prequels. He did Dead Man's Walk and then Comanche Moon. Well, I went in chronological order and I read Dead Man's Walk, Comanche Moon, Lonesome Dove. And for me, Lonesome Dove ended in such a way that it was perfect. Everything about those three books, just bam, 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 one after another. It was so good. I never thought I was going to fall in love with a Western story, and I never thought that a Western story was going to make me cry as much as those books did. It was just, and I know that Lonesome Dove itself was where all of that emotion was at, but because I read the backstory on a lot of these characters, that made it more impactful for me. Now, this particular book happens after all of that stuff, and it literally felt tacked on. Like it was like, well, let's just throw a little bit more on there. And it didn't feel like it belonged in that series to me. I feel like they could have just changed the name of that one or two. I think there's 2 or 3 characters from the Lonesome Doves, the rest of the Lonesome Dove series that are in this. But if you just changed their names and changed a little bit of their history, it could have been a completely different book in a completely different setting. Well, not setting, but a completely different world, and it would have been better. It didn't feel to me like it belonged with that series. And the other thing that I didn't like about it is there were several times that McMurtry did this thing where he would say something in a paragraph and then several pages later say the exact same thing, maybe worded a little bit different, but there was a lot of repetitiveness. And I think this book could have been cut down by at least a third because there was just a lot of repetitiveness and it just felt like fluff. Like some of it was, I don't know. I didn't enjoy it at all. And I do have the other three books on my shelf, and I am going to keep this one, and I am going to read it again in time, and maybe it'll be better in the future. I don't know, but right now I was just kind of middle of the road on this, and it to me it felt tacked on, which is unfortunate because the first 3 books that I read were some of the best reading that I had done. I believe it was last year that I did it. And I now know that a lot of people feel the same way, that this was just not the thing. They didn't like this sequel at all. And but I didn't know that when I first started the series. When I stopped after reading the 3rd book, Lonesome Dove, to me that just felt like a conclusion. My heart was broken, but there was also, there was some resolution. If everything felt like it was just perfectly ended. And I just couldn't bring myself to read more because I didn't know what was going to happen, and it just I wasn't emotionally ready for it. And it's, to me, it just wasn't my thing. Like I said, if they had just changed names and backstories of a couple of characters, it would have been a good story on its own. If they had done a little bit of streamlining it too, because like I said, there was a lot of things in there that was repeating, just like I'm repeating myself right now. But I'm not an author. Okay, so another book that I read for spooky season was this one. I found this one in a little free library, Where the Chill Waits by T. Chris Martindale. I had no clue what this was. Obviously, it takes place in a forest. It looks like they're hunting. maybe something goes wrong. And then on the back cover, it says, what does it say? They went into a valley where an ancient evil hid, and when the winds came and the animals they slew refused to die, they quickly learned which of them was the weakest and which was the strongest. Now, when it said animals that are being hunted are refusing to die, that was it. I'm reading that. So I did, and it's basically this guy who's very rich, owns a company. He's got these employees who are all trying to go up the ladder, and every now and then he puts on these trips and he invites certain people, and he kind of puts them through some sort of test to see if in his eyes they are worthy of advancing in his company. And this particular time they thought they were going fishing somewhere in the United States somewhere, and they ended up in Canada, and he's taking them hunting, and I think only one of them has ever actually held a rifle. So right there, bad things are going to happen. I don't want to spoil it, but it does say on the back that there is an ancient evil in these forests, and it was good. It wasn't the best thing that I read, but it was for spooky season, and it was exactly what I wanted. Not wonderful literature, but entertaining. And this one, I didn't know what this one was either. This is obviously a self-published book that I found in a little free library called Cassandra Files Genesis by Rod Pennington. Without even looking at the description on the back, I picked up this book and said, I'm taking it home because I need to know what these evil little rubber duckies are all about. I need to know what's going on with them. And it turns out that it's about a young woman who's in the Navy. She is a combat pilot. She's a lieutenant. Her father and her grandfather, and maybe even great-grandfather, were all admirals. And it looks like she's right in line to become another admiral in the family. But she crashes and in the water. They can't find her body. They presume that she's dead because it was a big explosion, this, that, and the other thing. And then they find her several weeks later, and suddenly she's able to tell the future, but nobody believes her. Everybody thinks she's crazy. It's a very interesting story, and I really enjoyed it. It's very fast-paced. Again, this is one that's just pure entertainment. It's not awesome literature. But man, I flew through this thing. I had such a good time with it. It was just straightforward writing, action-packed. There's a little bit of science fiction-y type stuff. There's a little bit of military and political maneuvering going on, and but it was very fast-paced, and it's not one of those where, and I've never been that kind of person, where you want to just go and research and see how accurate any of this is. It's just, you're just there for the ride, and it was a really good ride. And I decided that I wanted to find more by this author, and I did find a couple of short series by Rod Pennington on Amazon, and so I went ahead and got them because they were, each book was 99 cents, and I think each series had 4 books, so I paid less than $8 for 8 books or 8 ebooks. And so because I really liked this straightforward, like I say, quick entertainment in between some of the bigger stuff that I'm reading, and that really made me happy. And yes, those creepy rubber duckies do come into play. It was fun. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad. Sometimes you find these random gems, these hidden gems that you've never heard of. You've never heard anybody speak about it, and it's obviously, like I said, self-published. It's not coming from a big publishing house or anything. There's no advertising for it. It just, somebody bought it, left it in a free library, and I said, hey, I'm going to try it. And I love finding stuff like that because you never know what you're going to get. And sometimes it works out like this, and sometimes it's kind of wah, 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 but you know, I'm not above DNFing a book if I don't like it. So to me, it's always worth the risk. If something looks intriguing, why not snag it? And that's what I got done in these last couple of weeks. So real quick, I'm going to let you in on a couple of my plans for November. I already mentioned that tomorrow I'm going to start The War Master's Gate, which is the 9th book in the Shadows of the Apt series. Super excited about that. But I'm also going to read this at some point. This is another one of those self-published type deals by K.P. Laurenberg called Tierra Red. And the reason why I wanted to read this was because this says it's set against the backdrop of territorial days in New Mexico, a Gibson girl heroine, and an unforgettable cast of characters sifting through clues on 2 continents in their search for truth, justice, and love. So it sounds like it might be some kind of mystery in New Mexico and it says other continents. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited. It's kind of big. It looks bigger than what it actually is. It's not even 400 pages long. But it looks interesting. So we'll see how that goes. And then I've had these books for a little while. The Blade Itself is what I'm going to be starting by Joe Abercrombie. And I know there's a name to this series, but I don't know what it is. Hold on. The First Law. I think this is the First Law trilogy. On Mike's Book Reviews Discord, they're doing a read-along starting now in November. They're going to be doing a book a month, which is going to be this trilogy. And then I think there's 3 other books in another trilogy set in this same world, I guess. I don't own those 3, but my library has them. So I'm going to get started on these. And these I got used. I found them at a used bookstore and I snagged them because I had been hearing a whole lot about Joe Abercrombie at the time. And they've been sitting, so now's the time to get to them. So that's what else I'm going to be reading. And what else? I've got an Agatha Christie book coming up. I believe it's called Endless Night. I can't remember if I've read that one. And there's a science fiction book that I'm reading that's real short. It's by Olaf Stapleton, I think, called Star Maker. I got a few other things. Oh, and I did mention the second book I'm going to be reading in the Kingsbridge series. That's going to be on audio. So I've got a few things lined up already, but you know, I might sprinkle in a few more here and there. We'll see. But that's all I've got this time. So thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me. And if you had watched my crafting video that I uploaded just before this one, I did mention that I just wanted to say thank you because I have surpassed 200 subscribers. And for me, that's a big deal. And like I mentioned in the other video, I don't know how many of you who are watching for my books also watch for my crafting, but I've been doing this YouTube thing since 2018. And I'm just not one of those fast growing type of channels. And I am 100% okay with that, especially because I know I'm never going to be one of those professional YouTubers. Everything is done on my phone, the recording, the editing, the uploading, I don't have a special microphone, special lighting. I don't have any of that. This is just me sitting in front of my camera talking about what I did, and I hope people come and listen. And so I have just surpassed 200 subscribers. I think the last time I looked was 212, but I'm not sure on that number. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been with me from the beginning, and everybody who's joined me since, and hopefully any of you who haven't subscribed yet will continue to join me. But I do enjoy my little corner of my tiny little corner of YouTube, and thank you. I very much appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful couple of weeks until I see you next time with something else that I've read. Bye-bye.